Hey everybody, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in grey. We are learning to correctly evaluate expressions using GEMA by applying operations in the right order. So before we get into the maths and the examples of this, the three things I've underlined in orange are going to be the three things we're going to have to break down first. So the first thing we're going to look at, what exactly are operations? And operations are things you already know about. And just to recap them, it's adding and subtracting, it's multiplying and dividing. Now, when completing these BEDMAS-y GEMA type questions, most people don't actually do too many math errors. The mistakes they make are the mistakes related to this right order part. So you've got to complete, so these operations have to be completed in the right order. And this is really, really important. This is where all the errors are coming from. So if you don't complete them in the right order, you are not going to get the right answer. The big question becomes, how do you decide what order to complete these operations in? And that is when the use of these abbreviations is going to come into play. So the new New Zealand curriculum has the abbreviation GEMA, but I just want to note, BEDMAS was its predecessor, so you might have heard about BEDMAS, and if you're in other countries, you might hear of like BEDMAS or BODMAS, other things like that. So there's heaps of different abbreviations to help you remember these, but GEMA is what we're going to focus on in this video here. So let's write GEMA up the top here, GEMA. So the G, we'll start off with G. The G in GEMA stands for groups. We'll explain what all of these mean in a bit more detail. The E is your exponents. Again, I'll explain what that means. M, this is where it's going to be a bit tricky. M, the obvious thing it stands for is multiplication, which is correct. Multiplication, I'm running out of room there. But this also includes division. And I'll quickly explain why. The reason being, if you're dividing something by 4, that's actually the same as times by 1/4. So you can see division and multiplication actually kind of end up being the same thing in some circumstances. And finally, the A, that stands for addition. I'm just going to write it over here, addition. And that also includes subtraction as well. And again, addition and subtraction kind of have the same thing. So for example, if you're adding 2, that's actually the same as minusing -2. So you can see there's a bit of an overlap between addition and subtraction. So we've run through GEMA. The next thing we want to talk about is groups. So this is the newest part of kind of GEMA or BEDMAS groups. And there are different operations, there are different things that go on in maths that counts as this group. So your operations could be grouped together through a different array. So it could be through brackets, and that's what the B in BEDMAS stood for. So if you have brackets, that the numbers inside the brackets, they've all been grouped together. But there's also a few other things in maths that group things together. So for example, fractions is the next one. Fraction, so if you've got a whole lot of maths up there, and we've got 9 plus 4 down the bottom, the top of the fraction, that's been grouped together by your fraction, and the bottom of the fraction, that's also been grouped together by your fraction. So fractions are going to group together these things as well. You've also got square roots, so square roots group things together. So square roots, for example, if you got that, you got that stuff there. So normally teachers would say, well, there's invisible brackets here, but we can see together all of these operations in the middle here. They've been grouped together by that square root. And then the final one is the powers or exponents. So if you got 7 as your base number, you could have some numbers grouped together in the power slot. So if you had 2 times 3 plus 1, you can see all of those, because they are in the power slot, they've been grouped together as well. So all of these groups, it's a different way of explaining this brackets. And these are what teachers commonly would have referred to as, there's some invisible brackets. They're now encapsulated by this group comment. And the final detail I want to specifically mention, and this relates to the M and the A of GEMA, and it relates to left to right. And this is already a known thing in BEDMAS. So for example, if we write down BEDMAS down the bottom, spelled that wrong, BEDMAS, and I'm sure you might have remembered your teacher saying, well, multiplication and division kind of occur at the same time, so they work from left to right. and the same with addition and subtraction. So the final note is your multiplication. You've got to remember that has to happen from left to right. So when you see multiplication, when you see division, all mixed up, just do them in order. And then once you've done all of the multiplication, division, the same thing applies to your addition and subtraction things that should be left over. They should be the ones last to do. They also have to be done in left to right order. So now that we know the theory of GEMA, let's get into some easy, some medium, and then a really hard question at the end to practice its application. So it's going to be a bit laborious, but we're going to go through question by question, following GEMA in details. So we've got the first question here. So it's 5 plus 3 times 6. The first thing to consider, are there any groups? And I've listed them all down here for us. Well, there's no brackets, there's no fractions, there's no square root, and there's no power. So that means this group thing is irrelevant for us. Same with exponents. There's no exponents. And the next thing that we have to deal with is there any multiplication or division? And in this case, there is multiplication. So the two numbers being multiplied together are 3 times 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the 5 plus, because I'm not doing anything with the 5 or the plus yet. All I'm dealing with is the 3 plus, so the 3 times 6, and that there is 18, isn't it? So I'm going to change the 3 times 6 into the 18. And now that I've done that, that's my first step. I can now do my final step, which is addition. And adding those together, that gets us to an answer of 23. So looking at question number 2, and again, you got to start with the first thing, G for GEMA, and we know that one of the groupings is brackets. So that means any maths within a bracket, that takes priority. We've got to do that first. And potentially there may be cases where we have, the last one, and maybe even this one here, you might have to apply GEMA to a bracket or to a group, but we don't need to in this case. So the first thing to start off with is your 4 times, because we're not doing that at this stage here. So 4 times. So I'm going to write that down exactly as it is. I'm now going to complete the operation to do with the grouping of the brackets. And 7 minus 2 is 5. So that there is going to become 4 times 5, which is just 20. Next example here, we can see, or straight away I know there's no groups because we don't have any brackets, no fractions, no square roots, no powers. There's no exponents anywhere. We do have some multiplication and division. We've actually got both, right? We've got multiplication there and division over there. And my guide, so when you're trying to figure out which one to do, am I doing this one first? Am I doing this one first? Remember, work from left to right. So the one that is the most left, we're going to do first. In this case, it's the division. So 10 divided by 5 is going to be 2, isn't it? So we're going to write down the 2, and I'm going to write down the rest of my maths exactly as it is because I haven't done that yet. So I'm going to write 10, so 2 plus 7 times 3. So I'm still on the M part of GEMA. I can now actually do this multiplication over here. So like before, that 2 plus, I'm not doing anything with the 2 or the plussing yet. I'm just dealing with that multiplication over there, and that there becomes 21. And when I add 2 and 21 together, I get to 23. So we're now onto our first medium one, and straight away I can see I've got a fraction, right? That big fraction line down the middle tells you you've got a fraction, which means you've got two groups. You've got a group up the top and a group down the bottom. So you've got to do those separately before you deal with a fraction or before you deal with the division, if it ends up being division as well. So let's draw my fraction line. I'll draw it up here because I'm worried I'm going to run out of room. So let's deal with the top here. And what's interesting about the top is I've got a few different operations up top here. So I've got a times and a plus. So within the top, within my group, I've got to apply GEMA to itself. So it's kind of like that movie Inception. I'm doing GEMA within GEMA in this case. So within my group up the top there, there's no other groups. There's no exponents. There is multiplication. So I've got to do that multiplication first. So multiplication first, 7 times 2 is going to be 14. And then I've got that plus 1, which I'm not doing anything with yet. I'm going to go plus 1, and then I can actually add those together afterwards, can't I? I can now deal with my second group. So down the bottom there, 11 minus 6, that's just going to be 5. So I've dealt with my first step of my groups, but annoyingly, at the top of my fraction there, I've still got a group. So I can do that addition first. So that group there, that becomes 15, right? So we've got 15 over 5, and fractions, I've now cleared the group. I've got the top and the bottom all cleared, all sorted. Fractions are just division. So 15 divided by 5, we know that's just going to be 3. So equals to 3. So we've done that one there. The next one there, number 5, medium one again. So first thing to note is we've got some powers, right? All of the stuff here is in the power slot. So that means this here is grouped, and I've got to do all of that maths first. And within my group, I can see my multiplication, and then I can see some subtraction there. So I'm going to have to do that multiplication first. So 2 to the power of 10, I'm going to leave that as it is because that's not happening. My minus sign, I'll leave that there as well. But this 2 times 4, I'm going to do that first, and that becomes 8. I can now finish off with my group. 10 minus 8 is 2. So that's actually going to become 2 squared. And then finally, 2 squared is just 4. And this hard one, question number 6, I'm not actually going to go through the whole answer with you. I'm just going to kind of identify a few things. And then hopefully a few of the bright sparks amongst us will be able to maybe put the answer in the comment section to see if people have been able to spot it. But the first thing to note is we've got some groups, right? So let's put some invisible brackets that used to be put here. So this is a square root. So it means I've got to do all of the stuff inside the square root first. That's all grouped together. However, within my group, I've got another group, that power slot. So that has to be dealt with first before I can do the rest of the group that's within a group. And then finally, I suppose the tricky part is I can see multiplication and I can see division. So I've got to make sure I'm doing that in the right order, that right order left to right. So if you are able to get the answer to that hard question, let me know in the comments and I'll give you a like if you have got the correct answer.